Do the states individually have the right to print their own currency?
No, they do not. There's very few prohibitions on the states. For the most part, the Constitution protects that, and they want the states to do just about everything. But there were a few things. One, going to war. The other was on the currency, and the other one was on trade. We were to have trade among the states, and there should be no restrictions. And of course, now we've lost that prerogative over war. But there is a prohibition against the states because the states did it before the Constitution was written, and they inflated, and it was a big problem. That's why. And then they had, in the early years, destroyed the continental dollar, and they had runaway inflation. So the founders were very knowledgeable about the currencies, and they did not want to have anything to do with inflation, so the prohibitions were written in there. They didn't want the federal government to do it. There was no authority of the central bank, and that only gold and silver could be used as legal tender, and therefore the states could not use it. And yet the federal government imposes on the states exactly the opposite. They force everybody to use something as legal tender called Federal Reserve notes, and if you insist on using, gold currency that existed at one time at the face value, you're in for a big fight. You're in for a big fight with the authorities, and you'll end up in court.
The word economic collapse is thrown around a lot, and I think the people need to have a better clarification of what exactly it means. What is an economic collapse? What does it look like?
Well, there's a couple versions of it. We've seen the financial structure collapse, the lending agencies, the pyramiding of debt, and all the speculation, all the way up into these trillions and trillions of dollars worth of derivatives. Well, that's all over with. That was a house of cards, and it works fine when the value is going up. It's probably easy to look at it like the housing bubble. I mean, it used to be that people put money in the savings loan and somebody else borrowed the money and they built their house. But now, it became very complicated. There were no savings. The Fed created credit, and then there were guaranteed loans, and Fannie Mae would buy these, and then they would collateralize these, and they'd sell them, and it was on and on. Well, that system collapsed because it was built only on the fact as long as prices went up, it would work. So we are all witnessing that collapse. But the one that is likely to come, and the one that is much worse, is the collapse in the confidence of the currency itself. Ironically, with the collapse of the financial system and the banks and the large corporations, all the trouble they got into, instead of it destroying the dollar overnight, what it actually did was give the dollar a reprieve, because as people were scurrying around and trying to protect what they had, they literally went and bought dollars to park them. Even if they couldn't earn any interest, they would buy treasury bills, and we still benefited by that because we still have a lot of wealth in our country, and we have the military to back it up, and people felt more confident, so they have been parking their money in dollars. But you can't continue to double the money supply every year and run up $2 trillion worth of debt in a year and maintain confidence. So if the confidence is lost, which it will, then people will dump dollars. Now that is a financial calamity. That is really a financial panic, and that leads to real chaos, political chaos, and everything else. So, but at the rate we're going, we're working real hard in Washington to do exactly that, unfortunately.
Now, in the event of an economic collapse, and you mentioned that states don't have the ability to print their own currencies, but there is an upsurge in local currencies, even private currencies like the Liberty Dollar or ALCS-approved silver rounds that are really they're gaining popularity. And do you think that economies that isolate themselves by using these local currencies will have a better chance of recovery?
Well, I don't know whether you have to think about that in an isolated community. I think if if you just take the whole country, if there's 10 or 15 or 20% of the people who on their own say that I can preserve wealth by holding something of real value, this is a lot different than printing their own money. But if you hold your money in something of real value that people will seek, like silver coins or gold coins, they're all going to do quite well, whether they're together or not. They'll learn to talk to each other. But just like right now, people are anticipating that there could be a shortage of ammunition for guns. And if there's a law that says you can't get it and nobody even wants to buy it because there's too many rules and regulations, and somebody has this, it could serve as money as well. Mm-hmm. It's something of real value that the people want that you can't get by just printing it. So I think that does happen. I think the best argument is to use government legal tender coins. You know, they talk about legal tender and all, but they get awfully confused in arguing the case against, you know, if you had an old-fashioned silver dollar, and if silver soars back up to $50 an ounce or something like that, and you start using it, you can say, well, I'm just using government's, you know, legal tender. Mm-hmm. Of course, they're going to strongly object to it because it proves the failure of their system. Yet it's sitting right there. This is legal tender for $1. And that, to me, is a lot better than pretending that we can create a new currency. But when chaos comes, things of real value will serve as money. And it could be anything. And after World War II, it turned out it was cigarettes, you know, for a while. Anything that people really want. In our early years, tobacco was used as money. Anything is better than government paper when people lose confidence in the government paper.
Something like something that has real value, a commodity people need,
right.
people want. People,
right.
When you have paper, it's, you know, you can only do a few things with paper.
Yeah. And then the gold and silver has always proven to be the most convenient. Mm-hmm. So that's why Mises always argued that money, real money, has to come into existence through the market, something that everybody desired and understood and believed in, and it was recognizable, and you could divide it, and the characteristics aside. The whole notion that if we were starting a new community and 2 or 3 people got together and said, oh, we're going to be the money makers. We're going to print the money and everybody's going to use it. Well, everybody would laugh at them. What do you mean you're going to print the money and tell us what the money is? It would be a joke. Yet that's where we have ended up because we've destroyed the system that we had. And the reason it functions is because it once was linked to gold. You can't create a new currency out of thin air, but one that becomes totally fiat will operate until the people catch on.